归，真阳人民真火，今天等你了。
为建设富强、民主、文明、和谐、美丽的社会主义现代化强国努力奋斗。
On May the 31st, 1956, Mao Zedong visited Wuhan. There he received a report on progress in the construction of the Yangtze River Bridge, the first road and rail bridge to be built over the Yangtze since 1949. The weather was pleasant, and the Chinese leader was in a good mood. He said he'd like to take a dip, and so, for the first time, Chairman Mao swam across the Yangtze. He spent 2 hours in the water, swimming the 15 kilometers from Sheshan to Hankou. His route took him beneath the still unfinished Yangtze River Bridge. Several days later, he wrote the poem Swimming. I have just drunk the waters of Changsha and come to eat the fish of Wuchang. Now I am swimming across the great Yangtze, looking afar to the open sky of Chu. Let the wind blow and waves beat better far than idly strolling in a courtyard. Today I am at ease. It was by a stream that the master said, thus do things flow away. Sails move with the wind. Tortoise and snake are still. Great plans are afoot. A bridge will fly to span the north and south, turning a deep chasm into a thoroughfare. Walls of stone will stand upstream to the west to hold back Wushan's clouds and rain, till a smooth lake rises in the narrow gorges. The mountain goddess, if she is still there, will marvel at a world so changed. For many generations, the people of China had dreamt of developing the economy to the extent that they would create a modern country that was flourishing, prosperous, and strong. But they had always come up against internal barriers, the lack of material wealth, and the backwardness of science and culture. And externally, they faced imperialist embargoes. This film was shot in Yumen in Gansu province, soon after 1949. It shows how oil was being extracted at the time. Despite the best efforts of the country's oil workers, the country only produced 120,000 tons of oil a year. Mao Zedong lamented, "What can we produce at this time? We make tables and chairs, tea bowls and pots. We can grow grain and grind it into flour, and we can make paper. But we cannot make a single automobile, aeroplane, tank, or tractor." The Chinese people, who had been held back for so long, were ready for any challenge. In 1953, large-scale economic construction was unleashed across the country. The aspiration was to build China's own independent industrial system. In 1953, the first five-year plan called for the entire nation to unite and actively participate in the industrialization struggle. The first five-year plan aimed to complete 156 programs designed for China by the Soviet Union. The focus was on key sectors such as heavy industry, energy, raw materials, and machinery production. During his first trip to the Soviet Union, Mao Zedong visited the Stalin automobile factory. Seeing a line of new cars on an assembly line, he said to his entourage, "We need big factories like this one." On July the 15th, 1953, the foundation stone was laid for the People's Republic's first vehicle works, Changchun First Automobile Works. It had been suggested that the new factory should be called the Mao Zedong Automobile Factory, in the same way that the Soviets had named their own plant after their leader. Another suggestion was New China Automobile Factory. But since there would soon be a second and a third factory, Mao insisted on the name First Automobile Works. In making the People's Republic's first automobile, the engineers had to produce 2,335 parts. A team of 100 designers drew up more than 100,000 blueprints for processing and non-standard equipment.
当年呢，第一台车出来的时候，就像生了个大胖小子，自己的孩子，那就是他是做模型的，他是先干。 他做了模型才能翻沙，才能他是搞制造的。那时候我们吃在厂里，住在厂里，成天成宿都不回家，就盼着这个车出生。
600 million yuan was invested in making that first truck. That was 1 yuan for every person in China at the time. On July the 13th, 1956, the first Jiefang truck was finished. Some people had suggested that the model be named after Mao Zedong, but Mao himself cheerfully picked up his brush and, with vigorous strokes, wrote the word Jiefang, meaning liberation.
1956年7月13日，汽车厂建厂3周年的前2天，第一辆汽车诞生了。从今天起，中国不能制造汽车的历史结束了。 我们自己的汽车将源源不断的，一天比一天更多的从这里开出去。
The first batch of Jiefang trucks spent a week being test-driven around the factory compound. Then they headed out. Ma Guofan, who drove the first of the trucks on the road, could barely conceal his excitement. The look of joy on his face is described in the song, The Old Driver. First Automobile Works also produced China's first sedan car, the Dongfeng. Early in the morning of May the 21st, 1957, a red Dongfeng sedan was driven into the government compound at Zhongnanhai in Beijing. It circled the lawn twice before coming to a halt. A beaming Mao Zedong stepped out and exclaimed, "Wonderful! I've been driven in a car of our own." The burning passion of that era was reflected in the glowing steel furnaces and ruddy faces of the workers. Across the country, millions of ordinary people were striving day and night to support the industrialization of the new People's Republic. They were building their nation, and in the course of doing so, nurturing their spirit. Among the mountains, on the plains, and in the deserts, driven by the burning passion of the times, a new project was begun or completed every day. In July 1956, the Shenyang aeroplane factory produced its first fighter jet. In 1957, China began production of the T-54 tank. In 1958, the first Dongfang Hong tractor was manufactured. With the completion of the Luoyang tractor plant, China could make its own tractors for the first time ever. Vice Premier Tan Zhenlin said in excitement, "We have entered the era of tilling the land without oxen." At the Fularji and Taiyuan heavy machinery factories, China was independently manufacturing heavy mining and construction machinery. China had previously had to rely on imports, even for such simple items as nails and matches. Now, for the first time, it had a relatively complete industrial system. The grand plan for building the new People's Republic extended beyond basic industry. It reached deep into the country's mountains and plains. This road, National Highway 318, is known as China's scenic route. Along it, the scenery changes from plains to mountains, grasslands to glaciers. The workers who laid this road into Tibet had to carve it out from sheer rock. The words of the song, Ode to Mount Erlang, once echoed through these valleys. In early 1950, PLA units were dispatched to Tibet. The order from Mao Zedong was to build a road in the course of their advance. 110,000 PLA soldiers, engineers, and local people worked side by side carving out the new road. Their only tools were sledgehammers, chisels, shovels, and pickaxes. Their only safety equipment was a rope around the waist. With their lives hanging by a thread, they slowly pushed on towards Lhasa.
你不要说人，那猴子要在这上头跑，也不容易。但是18军英雄的官兵，他能爬上这样，
最紧的那个地方，把这个绳子捆到自己身上。从那么高的地方，你要往下掉，悬空大炮呀，一层层闪电，一层一层的爆破放炮，就下头就修了这个公路了。这些英雄战士，不怕苦，不怕死，舍了自己的命，也要把这个公路修到拉萨。
The road from Ya'an in Sichuan province to Lhasa in Tibet cost the lives of more than 3,000 officers and soldiers. That's almost one life for every kilometer of road. Their average age was 23. Having twice made the arduous journey to Lhasa on horseback, General Mu Shengzhong was keen for another road to be laid to Tibet. This one would start in Golmud, in Qinghai province. To gain support for his plan, he went to Beijing to meet Peng Dehuai, who had just returned from the war in Korea. 6 months later, the CPC Central Committee approved General Mu's plan for the Qinghai-Tibet Highway. On May the 11th, 1954, Mu Shengzhong led a team of 19 cadres and 1,200 local people and soldiers to the site of the proposed road. He had drawn up his battle lines, which ran along the banks of the Golmud River, through the Kunlun mountain pass and over the Chumar River. It took just 79 days for the highway to reach Hozil on the Qinghai-Tibet plateau. Mu Shengzhong was on the front line the entire time, wielding a sledgehammer by day and sleeping in a tent at night. To encourage his men, he told them, "Our determination to complete the Qinghai-Tibet highway cannot be shaken. If we perish, our bodies will be laid out facing Lhasa." Seven months and 4 days after the work began, and after 25 snow-covered mountains had been conquered, trucks could finally drive from Golmud to the Potala Palace in Lhasa. On December the 25th, 1954, the two new highways to Tibet from Sichuan and Qinghai opened to traffic. Tibet was finally accessible by road. By late 1957, almost all of China's counties and towns could be accessed by vehicles. The country now had over 250,000 kilometers of highways. It also had nearly 30,000 kilometers of railways, serving every region with the exception of Tibet. Civil airports had been built in cities including Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Chengdu. They served connections to Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa. It's said that rivers nurture civilizations, but they can also bring disaster. Since ancient times, vast areas of China had been plagued by frequent, deadly flooding. If China was to restore and develop its economy and protect its people's livelihoods, it was essential to tame and utilize its rivers. In the summer of 1950, the Huaihe River burst its banks. Mao Zedong wept when he read the report detailing the scale of the destruction. Almost 3 million hectares of farmland had been affected. The report recorded how victims who had escaped the raging waters by climbing trees either fell to their death or were killed by venomous snakes. Chairman Mao issued immediate orders for the Ministry of Water Resources to draft a plan for diverting the Huaihe. This plan must be completed by August, he stated, and be set in motion in early autumn once the Government Administration Council has approved it. In conclusion, he said, "How can we call ourselves a communist party if we cannot even protect the people?" The People's Republic's first major water conservancy project covered the entire Huaihe River basin. More than 20 million people were directly involved in the work, and the investment totaled around 700 million yuan. It was said at the time, fathers and sons rushed to the front, brothers cheerfully signed up, the women showed no frailty, and spouses joined the fray together. It was during this period that New China built its first dam on the Fuoziling Reservoir. No one in the country had any experience of building a reinforced concrete dam. A team of experts and technicians, including Mao Yishang, Qian Lingxi, and Huang Wenxi, helped develop the technology. The workers, by toiling during the day and studying during the night, developed more than 4,000 technical innovations. The dam was finished in November 1954. Experts have suggested that since its completion, this and other dams on the Fuoziling Reservoir system have prevented more than 230 major floods. Other key projects served to further limit the flooding that had regularly devastated parts of China. These included the Jingjiang River Flood Diversion Project and flood prevention projects on the lower reaches of the Yellow River. However, for the country's farmers, dams alone were not enough to secure a good harvest. For thousands of years, they had tilled their own small plots of land without the benefit of a communal irrigation system. Now, working together, they dug channels and leveled the land. The burning passion of that era also roused the country's farmers for the effort to collectivize agriculture. Beneath fluttering red flags, hundreds of millions of farmers carried out a project their ancestors had only dreamed of. It was a huge undertaking that not only guaranteed a stable harvest, it also brought about a marked increase in productivity and created the conditions for modernizing agriculture. In this way, the country's farmers made their own indelible contribution to the new People's Republic. South of the Tian Shan Mountains in Xinjiang, in the city of Kola, stands a monument to the 18th Regiment Canal. The copper statue depicts one of the countless soldiers who helped develop this border area. On September the 25th, 1949, under the command of General Wang Zhen, the First Corps of the PLA liberated Xinjiang. An order issued in the name of the Xinjiang military region stated that every soldier should participate in production. No one is excused labor. In response, the army in Xinjiang entered a new battle, gun in one hand and shovel in the other. Only a single division was left to defend the border. Campaign maps became production plans. Artillery aiming sites became theodolites. War horses became workhorses, and stirrups were turned into plowshares. In all, more than 100,000 soldiers joined this vigorous production movement north and south of the Tian Shan Mountains. In October 1954, the central government established the PLA Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps. In vast numbers, outstanding young people, demobilized soldiers, intellectuals and scientists from all over China joined the Corps. Determined to help develop Xinjiang, they braved the adverse weather conditions. They would go on to make a lasting contribution not only to the region's development, but also to its unity and social stability, and to the nation's defense. In the northern part of Heilongjiang province in China's northeast lies the Three River Plain. Here, the area along the Heilongjiang River and in the Nunjiang Basin was once an uninhabitable wasteland known as the Great Northern Wilderness. In the 1950s, a major reclamation project transformed this region into the Great Northern Breadbasket. It became famous for its rich black soil in which, it was said, even chopsticks would sprout if you planted them. In September 1950, a congress of hero soldiers and model workers was held in Beijing. Soldiers and workers from every region and every front gathered in the capital. Among them were many women. Liang Jun was China's first female tractor driver. After her picture appeared in a newspaper, she became a role model for young women of the 50s. Her image is featured on the 1 yuan note issued in 1960.
学会了修理、拆卸以后，技师被他积极的学习所感动，改变了以前的看法，亲自指导他学习驾驶技术。他现在可以离开技师，练习着开了。
我开上拖拉机的时候啊，我心情是比较激动的。我想这回我终于实现了目的了，我终于像苏联妇女那样，在我开着拖拉机将来驰骋在祖国大地上，我是最光荣的人，我是最愉快的人。虽然苦，但是感觉到非常舒服，从心里往外呀感谢共产党。所以那时候开荒种地呀，有使不完的劲儿。
It was thanks to the efforts of such heroes and pioneers that the Great Northern Wilderness in Heilongjiang could be developed. By 1977, the reclamation of the wasteland had involved 140,000 demobilized soldiers and tens of thousands of other young people. Sadly, many of them lie buried beneath the black soil. These brave people bequeathed a great gift to the succeeding generations, the Great Northern Wilderness spirit of enduring an arduous struggle, bravely opening up new land, working for the general good, and selfless sacrifice. The People's Republic of China was developing rapidly, and success quickly followed success. The goals of the first five-year plan were met in 1956, a year ahead of schedule. On September the 25th, 1957, the Yangtze River Bridge at Wuhan opened to traffic. To celebrate, China Post issued a pair of stamps with images of the bridge. Still, to support its rapid development and achieve industrialization, the country required more knowledge. In other words, it needed its youth to be highly educated. When Mao Zedong traveled to the Soviet Union in 1957, he made a point of visiting the Chinese students in Moscow. He told them, "The world belongs to you. It belongs to all of us, but ultimately it belongs to you. You are young and full of vigor. In this thriving age, it would seem that you are the morning sun at 8 or 9 a.m. Our hopes rest on you." Through such expressions of lofty expectation, their leader stirred the blood of China's youth. They were already prospering. Now they realized it was their responsibility to become the creators of great plans and the driving force in carrying them out.
多么的幸运，降生在你的怀里，我的血脉流淌着你的神奇和美丽，那仁慈的情谊，那温暖的回忆，你对我的恩泽感动天和地。从来不曾放弃你，因为希望埋在心底，追寻自由的勇气，多少年云涌风起，幸福是没忘记，痛苦中举着你，我的灵魂紧紧跟着你呼吸。天要中华，天要中华，风雨要不挂，苦难中开花，真心祈祷。天要中华，愿你平安长生生生不息啊。你就是我。